Hello everyone, Justin here from JSG Watches. For those of you that are returning back to the channel, it's good to see you here. And for those of you that are new to the channel, welcome. This channel is all about watch restoration, watch servicing, with this video being about this Seiko 5 that I've got on the bench now. So what we can see is this Seiko 5 is not in the best of shapes. The glass on it is absolutely scuffed to bits. And in general, the condition of this watch is filthy. It is gunked up, grimed up on the outside at least. I don't know what it looks like on the inside. We will get to that. But this watch is a Seiko 5 from 1982. We can tell the age of the watch by deciphering the serial number on the back of the case. So for anyone that has a Seiko, you want to know what age it is, all you need to know is the serial number on this back case, as well as the movement number. You can go online, plug in the details, and you can find it there. So we can see that this watch, the case itself, it's supposed to be silver, but it has got black gunk all over it, which we're going to address further down the line. But this watch in general, this watch has grown on me. I've actually worn this watch every day for the past few weeks, and it's making me a bit nervous about this restoration, because this by far the most complicated movement I've worked on, with the first and foremost the automatic works. It's also got a weekday and a date, and it's a Seiko. So Seiko do things their own way. They design and build their own in-house movements. So a Seiko movement, if you've not worked on one before, is going to be something fresh, something new. I'm up for the challenge, and I'm looking forward to stripping this thing down. But I'm definitely going to take my time, because I like this watch a lot. I don't want to damage it because I want to keep wearing it. So I'm going to take my time with this one and just take it nice and slow. So what are we going to do in this video? So we're going to do the standard strip down, clean and service. But we're also going to try and clean up the case. And secondly, we're going to try and clean that glass. I could replace the glass, yes I know, but I don't want to do that necessarily, because I want to try and keep this thing as original as possible. If I can salvage the original glass and try and buff out some of them scratches, I'm going to try it. And if it doesn't work, then I will replace. But let's see how I do later on. But as I strip this thing down, let's talk a bit about Seiko. So the history of Seiko. Seiko founded in Japan in 1881 and is still running today. And it's still a big player in the watch industry. So how big is Seiko? Well, who hasn't heard of Seiko? Seiko is a household name, not just domestically in Japan, but globally. Everyone's heard of a Seiko. And a Seiko 5, the model we have here, being a staple of the Seiko collection. The Seiko 5 was first introduced in 1963, and it was designed to be a bit of a workhorse, to be honest. It was designed to be mass produced and built for durability, requiring little to no fuss in order to keep it running. Rumour has it that the Seiko 5 movements did not get touched by human hands during the complete assembly, so everything was automated, everything was done by machine. Which I'm not sure how true that is, but maybe someone can shed some light. If someone does have information, they can shed some light on that in the comments below, because that would be interesting to know. This one is a standard Seiko 5. Seiko 5, actually, they had a few variations with the 5 line, with things like a Seiko 5, Seiko 5 Sports, Seiko Sportsmatic 5, Seiko 5 Actus. Not only were they making them to be mass produced, but they also tried to cater for different markets, different styles. With all the movements as well being, they didn't use a common movement. There's been a few movements throughout the decades, throughout the generations. This particular movement being a 17 jeweled 7009A movement. Looking a bit more into the Seiko 5 line, what does the 5 stand for? Does it mean anything? A little Google search and there's many answers around, but looking on the Seiko website, it states that the 5 stands for 5 attributes of the watch. Them 5 attributes being automatic winding, date displayed in a single window, water resistance, recessed crown at the 4 o'clock position, and a durable case and bracelet. This is actually the first Seiko I've owned and actually looked at close up. And on first impressions, I'm impressed. As I said, I've grown to like this watch quite a lot. So I can see what all the fuss is about, and these watches definitely have something special about them. The first thing I've noticed when you open up, especially this movement, is that was the only plastic part of this movement that I've seen so far. So that was the intermediate date wheel. Everything else has been metallic. Everything's been metal. Seeing no plastic parts within a watch is a good sign. It's something you want to see. It's not, you don't necessarily want to open up a mechanical watch and see a world of plastic. Seeing the metal parts is pleasant. It's something that I enjoy. It's probably helped the watch last this long as well. So this one being from 1982 and still running strong. It looks very healthy. When we look at the balance wheel running in the background, it looks like it's ticking along nicely. But the disassembly so far, there's been a few things that I've not been too familiar with. But a good thing about Seiko is when you are dismantling one of these watches, you can go online and you can find just look for the particular movement that you are working on, and you can find the service manual. So all I'm doing here is I've got the Seiko service manual, which gives me all of the parts. It numbers them and it gives you the order in which to dismantle. Especially this watch has the automatic winding works, which is what I'm removing now. This is something completely new to me. I'm learning on the job here. I've never dealt with an automatic winding works yet. Everything here is new, a bit unfamiliar, and I'm just feeling my way around the watch. So the automatic winding works it's a mechanism to help wind the watch automatically without having to physically wind the crown to wind the watch up to give it power. So this Seiko 5 actually doesn't have manual winding capabilities, so you cannot manually wind this watch to give it power by rotating the crown. This one solely relies on the automatic winding works. Hence, that mechanism must work. If it doesn't work, or if it's not working efficiently, the watch won't wind up, it won't power the mainspring, and then the watch just wouldn't run very well. So I'm taking extra care looking at these parts, because I want this watch running as well as it can. I want many more years usage out of this watch because, as I mentioned at the beginning, I like this watch a lot and I really want this to sit on my wrist for many years. I'm also taking my time because, for those of you that have followed the channel, I'm very new to the horology journey. This is something I've only picked up in the past 4 months or so, 4 or 5 months, and this being now the 7th watch that I'm working on. So for those of you that have stuck around maybe from the beginning, the first video that I did 4 months ago was the second watch that I worked on. So again, another reason I'm trying to just build on my skills piece by piece and not jump straight into the deep end is because I'm learning everything. Everything I work on is semi-new. Everything I work on is different because I'm just trying to build my skills piece by piece. This Seiko watch being the first sort of established brand that I've worked on. The previous ones were all quite relatively cheap vintage watches, ones that I picked up for say $40, $50 each. But now I've moved on to something with more of an established name, like Seiko, still relatively cheap because I am still learning, but something with a bit more build quality. As mentioned earlier, Seiko do the things their own way, and this is actually the click. If anyone's worked on Swiss movements, they'll know the typical Swiss click design. It's normally in sort of a spring on its own, plus a rotating click and held down with a screw. But that was actually just a piece of metal slotted into a recess, into the main plate. So quite a simple design, but achieves the same result. So I've been reading, obviously I'm trying to learn a bit more about terminology of watches and what things are, what the design of things. And I've read there's a difference between a bridge and a cock. So normally I refer to everything as a bridge, but my terminology is not correct, because a bridge is something that bridges something with 2 or more screws, whereas a cock is something that is like a cantilever. So it's held in position with one screw, something like the balance cock. So it's the cock that holds the balance wheel in position. It cantilevers over and is only held down with one screw. So going forward, I should call things by the rightful names. I shall continue to learn and continue to update my knowledge. Flipping the movement over here, continuing with the disassembly, we're actually looking here at the keyless works, which again is a very different design to what I'm used to seeing, but very simple. So I'll just inspect that when we clean everything up. The plan now is disassembly is complete. Everything I've just put through my cleaning process, a 3-part cleaning process. And the plan now is I'm going to start the reassembly. Starting with the clutch wheel and the winding stem. As I said earlier, the Seiko service manuals, what I'm following is the Seiko service manual, which it numbers everything from 1 to 56, and that's the order in which you disassemble and reassemble. This being the first time I've worked on a Seiko is actually a very handy thing, and I've got some more Seikos in line for some future videos. And I did a quick Google search, and all the Seiko movements that I've got actually have the same thing. So it's very handy to have the parts catalogs and the service manuals to know exactly how to disassemble and reassemble these things. So anyone looking to learn and get into watchmaking, I think a Seiko, and even a Seiko 5 like this one, is a very good watch to start on. 1, they have lots of information on the internet about them. 2, they are relatively cheap. And 3, there's an abundance of spares. So if something is broken or something does get broken, you can find a replacement online, or even a full donor movement, and right your wrongs to fix anything that may have been damaged. Starting with the keyless works, and I'm just putting on some D5 grease onto some of these high friction contacts and mopping up the excess. Once the winding stem is in and fixed down, I can flip the movement over and we can start with the train of wheels. So I'll start with the train of wheels, and we've got the center wheel going in first with the center wheel bridge. Or is it a cock? The parts catalogue says it's a center wheel bridge, but it's only held down with one screw. And it doesn't bridge over the center wheel. So is this technically a center wheel cock? Someone please clarify, so for the rest of us to know. And after that, anyone that's worked on watches, or anyone looking just interested in how a watch works, the train of wheels within a watch's movement typically has a 5-wheel setup. So the first wheel being the main barrel, and then it just goes in sequential order. So it goes in the main barrel being wheel number 1, then you have the second wheel, third wheel, fourth wheel, and then the escape wheel. So the escape is the smaller one that we can see here with the funny shaped teeth. Every watch you work on, they will have these 5 wheels It's just the orientation and the order in which they are placed. So anytime that you are working on a new watch, unfamiliar watch, if you don't have a service manual, I normally just take photographs of what I'm doing. So every time I take it apart, I'm taking photos and just making notes to understand where everything come from and the order in which they go back. Moving on, we have this. The automatic works. When I disassembled, I didn't show you me taking it apart, but I have taken it apart to clean. And now we just need to reassemble. We have the barrel and train wheel bridge, which has this pull lever and a first reduction wheel connected with just a circlip. And I need to put this thing on now because the clip goes underneath the bridge. So when I put the bridge back on, if I hadn't have installed this now, then I would have had to take it off because you need to put the clip on from the underside. But once that's been installed, I can then position the train wheel bridge, which has got 2 jewels in this plate. And what I need to align the main barrel, the escape wheel, the second wheel, and the third wheel with their respective pivot holes. So what I'm doing is I'm gently trying to manipulate this back in position, and I'm going to rotate when they're all in position. If you rotate any of the wheels, so I'm going to try and rotate the main barrel, you should see the escape wheel, the main barrel being the first wheel, the escape wheel being the last wheel, the fifth in the train. You should see when you rotate the main barrel, the escape wheel should rotate. Once that rotates, we can secure it down with the screws and knit this barrel and train wheel bridge down. This one held down with 3 screws. I'll give it another check, and after I've screwed down, everything looks good. The click as well, click's gone in place, doing exactly what it's intended to do. So after the click is in place, I can put the ratchet wheel on top. So the ratchet wheel engages over the main barrel. So when the watch winds up, it's actually the ratchet wheel that's secured to the main barrel. The ratchet wheel turns, which is secured to the main barrel, and then the click prevents the ratchet wheel from unwinding. So when the ratchet wheel winds up, the click prevents it from unwinding to unload the power that we've just stored in the mainspring. So as I'm trying to manipulate this in position, we can see how the click actually works. So when it rotates clockwise in the orientation I have it now, the click moves and gets out of the way. But then if the ratchet wheel tries to rotate anti-clockwise, the click engages and it prevents the ratchet wheel from going anti-clockwise. It can only rotate unidirectionally. Here we now have the second reduction wheel for the automatic winding works. So this second reduction wheel it actually has some teeth underneath it which engage directly with the ratchet wheel, which is what helps wind the mainspring up. This one's secured down with a reverse threaded screw as well, so we can tell that by the pattern on the top of the screw. A typical screw would only have 1 line, indicating that it's a standard thread. Anything with the 3 lines, it's just an indication that screw is a reverse thread. So be careful, be warned. Do not try and force these ones in, otherwise you'll do more harm than good, and that is not the intention here. So another thing here is this is referred to as the pallet cock. But this cock technically is held down with 2 screws, and it technically bridges the pallet fork. So is it a pallet bridge? The Seiko parts catalogue refer to it as a pallet cock, but I think that's more of a bridge personally. After installing the pallet fork, I've just noticed a little error. I need to wind the watch up to check that the power is going through the train of wheels, through to the pallet fork, but I had that second reduction wheel in place. So I've just temporarily removed that. Given the ratchet wheel a wind to put some power into the main spring. And I'm just flipping the pallet fork to make sure that it's got some power. Power is being delivered all the way through, and it's flipping over with some energy. Once that is in, this is everyone's favorite part, because this is the moment of truth. We can get this balance cock back in, a balance complete. And look at this, fired straight up. Some of the previous watches I've worked on, it's not been a straightforward story. And I think this is just testament to the build quality of a Seiko watch, where if it is disassembled, reassembled correctly, when you put it back together, then it's going to operate as expected. A sigh of relief. We've got the basics done, and we now know that the watch is running again, which for me, I'm happy. But I'm going to flip the movement over, and we are going to continue with the assembly. The watch running is the first hurdle, but we want to find out how well is the watch running. So I'm going to need to install everything onto this watch to complete the installation. Then we can put this thing onto a time grapher after we oil everything, and we can see how well this thing is running. So it might be running, but it might not be running very well. With the watch flipped over, we can continue with the keyless works. And what we're seeing here is typically the keyless works, previous watches I've worked on, they only have very few functions, but a Seiko 5 has some quick set functions. So it's a bit more complicated than the previous watches I've worked on. The quick set functions being so you've got a quick set of the day if you push the crown in. You've got a quick set of the date if you pull the crown out one click and rotate. And then you've got the standard time adjustment if you pull the crown out all the way. So when I'm looking at the keyless works, that is why it's a bit more complicated to what I'm used to, because there's just the additional function, the additional functionality. Which is why when I am installing the parts back in place, I am just doing a rough check to make sure that if you do click these quick set functions, then the respective component is moving. But so far everything looks okay. So we won't know until we put the date dial and the day dial back on and check if everything is working as it should. What we have here is, this one's a date jumper. So this holds the date disc in position. This is what gives it that sharp snap when it clicks over each day. And I just need to press that in whilst I put the date disc on. And finally we have a date dial guard. This one just retaining everything in position so that everything doesn't jump out. One thing about this watch that I have had to be wary about is there's many different screws in this watch. There's a whole variety of different style screws. They're different shapes, sizes, threads. Every screw that I took out, I've had to put in an individual pot just to confirm that when I reassemble, everything goes back where it should go. 2 videos ago, the seagull movement I did, that one was quite nice. It had quite a high level of standardization. So a lot of the screws were all the same, meaning it didn't matter where you put them back because it's all the same style screw. Whereas this movement, I think there's about 6 or 7 different types and different quantities, making it quite a mental challenge to try and remember where everything goes. But that's where when you get into watchmaking, being organized is critical. You have to be organized with what you do. You cannot just disassemble a watch, put everything into one pot and expect it to go back together and remember where everything goes. I know what it's like when you do get a watch on the bench and the disassembly is the easiest part. And when you get a watch on the bench, all you want to do is jump straight in and take everything apart and just have a look what's inside. But that's going to give you big headaches when you go to reassemble the watch if you don't make any notes. So being organized is key to watch repair. But we see here the quick set functions for the date and the day is looking all right, looking good. So now moving on to oiling the jewels. Here I have the pallet fork and I'm just putting some oil onto the pallet stones. As well as I've removed, cleaned and oiled the capstones for the balance. And I'm doing this one by one. I could have removed these when I did the cleaning. From what I've seen online, some watches have different size stones for the upper and lower sides. What I don't want to do is get that wrong. I actually clean it with them stones in and then remove, clean and oil after I've assembled. So now everything is up and running. Let's have a look how this watch is running. And look at that. The amplitude is low. It could probably be higher. But the beat error and the rate is very good. Now, I must confess, when I was disassembling the movement, I did try to remove the main spring from the barrel. But the barrel on these Seiko 5s is actually, it's recommended to be a replacement item, a non-serviceable item. That's not to say that they are not serviceable, because I do know some people that have been able to do it. But when I attempted to open the barrel, it was just very stiff and I did not want to damage any of the teeth on the main barrel. The metal on that main barrel is the teeth are small, the metal is soft, and if I would have gone any more aggressive than I did, I think I would have likely damaged the teeth. So I decided against it. I've just put the main spring back in, which is probably why the amplitude is not as high as I would expect, because I have no idea the condition of the mainspring in that barrel. But when I did a check before I disassembled the watch, I did give it a full wind and I did check how many hours the watch would run for. It's designed to run for around 40 hours and I got about 32 out of it. So the mainspring is definitely not in the healthiest condition, but it's not horrendous, which is reflected by 215 degrees of amplitude. It's not brilliant, but it's not horrendous. And it will definitely make this watch run very well. But we can continue. I've put the face, I've put the dial back on. I'm now putting the hands back on. Just checking all the functions really. Making sure the hands don't foul against each other. Making sure the date, the day, flick over, the quick set functions operate. And everything looks good. So now we can move on to this crystal, which is a state. It's an absolute mess. It's not only scuffed up to bits, it's absolutely filthy. Look at this. That is probably 35 years worth of dirt. Who knows, maybe it's never been cleaned in its life. But everything is original, which is a nice bonus. So I'm not going to replace this strap, I am going to clean it up. So my plan is the bracelet, the case and the buckle, I'm not going to polish, I'm just going to clean. I personally prefer seeing something in original condition. When you see a polished case and everything's looking a bit dull and flat, it's just not appealing to me. I think the sharp edges of a watch and the crisp lettering on the buckle, you only get it once, and when you polish it down you remove its charm. So I don't mind seeing the scuffs and the scrapes on the bracelet itself or the case, but what I don't like is that crystal. That crystal is horrendous. So that is why I could replace it, and a new crystal is probably only about $20. But then it's not original. I want the original crystal to remain in this watch. This one being a mineral glass crystal, so polywatch is not going to work. So I'm going to physically need to sand the scuffs out. So I'm going to use a 3-part process. I'm going to use 800 grit sandpaper, 1000 grit sandpaper, 2000 grit sandpaper, and I'm going to see how it looks after that. But we can see after the first and the second ones, yes, it's getting out a lot of them deep scuffs and scratches, but it's very milky. It's very milky. So I'm moving on to the 2000 grit, the finest coarse paper that I'm going to use for the sandpaper. And let's just see how this one comes out. So I'll give it a sand for a good 15 minutes. I'll give it a wipe. And again, it's done a good job getting the scuffs and scrapes out, but it's very milky and it's not got that clear glass shine. So what I've got now is I've got some cerium oxide, which is glass polish. It comes in a powder form. You mix it with 2 parts powder, 1 part water to make a paste. And I'm going to get my Dremel out and see if this can bring it up to a brighter finish. I've never actually used this glass polish before, so I am learning on the job, and my first attempt is looking a bit dry, so I'm just going to put a bit more water, and I think, yeah, that's what it's supposed to look like. So I'm going to just keep going in circular motions with my felt tip Dremel. Adding more of the glass polish, give it a wipe, and after the first run, let's have a look. Let's see what it's done. I mean, it's getting there. It's still very milky, but I just think I need to do some more rounds. I'm going to continue with a few more goes. One thing you need to be careful of if anyone wants to try and repeat this is this glass polish and the Dremel the glass gets very warm very fast. So I don't want to overheat the glass and crack it. But a few runs in and look at this. It's looking amazing. This has definitely taken out that milky finish. I used the Dremel for around 20 minutes, I think. Short 30-second bursts, just to make sure that I didn't overheat the glass and didn't crack the glass. Let's go back to how it looked originally. So this one's scuffed to pieces. And look at this. This is the end result. And I am over the moon with this. Yes, it's not perfect. Yes, it's not like it's come out of the factory. Yes, there are some minor blemishes. But they honestly look a lot worse on this macro lens than they do in real life. The naked eye cannot see these scuffs and scratches. And I must confess that the first result I wasn't too happy with. So I did do a second round. I went back to the 800, then back to the 1000, back to the 2000 grit sandpaper. Then I did another 30 minutes of glass polish, and then this is what we got as the end result. And I am over the moon. As well as this bracelet after I've cleaned everything up. Look how nice this now looks. Absolute day and night. All it took was a little clean, a little polish of the glass, and this watch is looking $1 million. I did mention that I wanted to try and keep this watch as original as possible, but this is actually a tester trial. I've got a Lordmatic which has exactly the same problem with the crystal being scuffed to pieces. But the Lordmatic being a bit more of a pricier watch. It's not an expensive watch, but it's a bit more expensive than a Seiko 5. So my plan and intention was I got this Seiko 5 as a trial run to see what the results would be. Because replacing the crystal on a Lordmatic, it's not cheap. To get an original crystal, yes, I could put in an acrylic crystal, but I'm not too keen on the look of that. I want it to look original. I want the original glass. So my intention was to try and polish out the scuffs and the scrapes in the crystal, but I've used this as a test piece. And I am over the moon with the results, and it's given me a lot of confidence for the Lordmatic. But look at this, guys. Look at that. How much nicer is this? I liked this watch before I cleaned it up and before I serviced it. Now I love it. Honestly, I am so happy with the result. There is a minor blemish on the hands. The hands are dented and the loom is a bit damaged. Unfortunately, I don't have the equipment with me now to be able to repair that in this video. It's on the way, and I will definitely do another video, a follow-up, to see how that looks. But thank you for joining me on this journey. This one's been a tough one, but a very, very rewarding one. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed doing it, and I hope to see you in the next video. Take care, guys, and I'll see you again soon.